Howdy everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're out here in the garage working on the 2008 Harley Street Glide again. Today we're going to be going inside the primary and replacing the compensator. One of my other videos, I think one of the maintenance videos, I mentioned that we'd probably eventually have to replace the compensator because we're getting a lot of clunking when we shut the engine down. We've got some starter grinding every now and then, especially when the bike's hot. Just a general rattling around kind of a sound in here, and those are all signs and symptoms of a compensator going bad or has gone bad. The spring pack in it just isn't holding it together strongly enough anymore. We're going to go in here, take a look at that a little closer, and replace the compensator while we're in there. I've already got the parts and everything, so let's get started. Real quick here, we'll run through the extra stuff you need to do this job, the parts, and then the extra things besides just your basic hand tools. Should always have a shop manual when you work on your stuff. Torque specs, how to, all that stuff's great for that. Couple other things we're going to need in the parts in the new kit. It comes with a plastic funnel, more or less, for lack of a better word, that you glue to the inside of the primary cover. You'll see that when we get to it. But we need the epoxy to glue that plastic to the aluminum primary cover. Here's what I got. This is basically perfect for what they're looking for. This is made especially to adhere plastic to metal. This is going to work fine for what we're trying to do. I got some 80 grit sandpaper to rough up the inside of the primary cover if we need to make sure that this bond sticks very well. And then of course we got our parts. Here's the plastic funnel type of thing I was just talking about. The kit comes with two different ones. We'll have to look at the instructions and see which one we need. But basically, this is the thing you glue to the inside of the primary cover. Oil collects in here as it gets splashed around and then drains through this little funnel thing right onto the compensator for better lubrication. So we've got those. I didn't mention it yet, but this is a Harley Screamin Eagle kit. I've already had it out of the box once, kind of looked at everything, but it's really well put together. I think this is going to do great for what we're trying to do. I could have went with an aftermarket kit, but there's just so many different ones. There's, a kit that completely eliminates the compensator. There's probably a dozen different types of compensators that, of course, the manufacturers of those all claim that they're the best. They're better than anybody else, and buy ours and you'll never have any more issues. I went with kind of a factory performance thing. Just, I know it's going to work with my bike. I'm not going to have any issues. So that's why what I went with and why I went with that. So here's the drive ramp. Like I said, everything just come really well wrapped. Got a clip that helps hold this plastic deal on, as well as gluing it, bonding it. Everything in here is packaged really well. Lots of styrofoam to hold everything in place so it doesn't fall around while it's getting shipped. These are our large, the large and the medium springs, Belleville washers, which put together like this, they make a spring more or less to hold the compensator together. This is our outer gear that the primary drive chain rides on. The newer kit has a Torrington bearing right here. So this has a bearing in it rather than the factory, older model factory, which did not have a bearing right there. So that's all in great shape. Should be in great shape. It's brand new. A new bolt. And I think that one more thing in here. So as part of this kit, we also have to replace the stator, or not the stator, the rotor. The factory one should have a lip on it around here that we don't use with this. So that's the parts. So let's get back to looking at the bike and see what all we got to take apart to get this done. Okay, so it looks like I made a mistake already. I showed you the other special tools that we need, or special stuff, the adhesive and the sandpaper and so forth. I forgot two special tools that we are going to need. First one is a special socket. Not exactly sure what size that is. I can't recall, but it should be on the screen right now. And the other thing, we're going to need the socket to get the clutch nut off. Um, and this is a block to keep the chain and the gears from rotating. We'll see what this specifically is for here in a minute. But this socket and this block you're going to need. I got both of these on Amazon, relatively cheap. This was, if I remember right, this was around $20, give or take a little bit. This block I think was under 10. You can also use a piece of 2x4 to do the same thing as this little block, but so cheap I figured I would just get the proper tool. So with that out of the way, we got to take the primary cover off. To do that, we're going to have to take the floorboard off, the heel shifter, and that should be all the parts we need to take off in order to get the primary cover off. Obviously, we're also going to have to drain the oil out of it. There's a drain plug right here where my finger's at. Takes a 5/8 wrench or a Allen wrench to get it out of there. You can use either one. We're gonna have to take the derby cover off to fill the case back up. So I'm gonna go ahead and take it off now. So that's what we gotta do. First thing I'm gonna do is get the oil draining. That way, while we're taking the rest of this stuff apart, the oil can be draining, and hopefully by the time we get to taking the cover off, all the oil's drained out of it, or most of it, where we're not making a mess here. These drain plugs shouldn't be very tight. They just seal with an O-ring. It just needs to be just a little bit past finger tight. This oil hasn't been in there long. It does have a little bit of metallic feel to it, and the oil's pretty gray. I don't know how well you can see that, the light. Can't even get my arm twisted that way. But I don't know how well that's going to turn out on the video, but it's kind of a gray color. And as I rub my fingers together like that, I can feel a little bit of a metallic kind of thing. I wonder if that's the compensator coming apart. Yeah, I don't know if that helps in seeing it, but definitely a gray color, and it's got sparkles in it, metal flakes. So we'll have to take an extra close look while we're in there to see if we can tell where that metal flake's coming from. Off the compensator, off the something in the clutch back here. There's a few different places it could be coming from. So I'm really glad we're doing this right now. I really hate to keep riding knowing that metallic stuff's in there, or something grinding, coming apart, whatever you want to call it. So next, now that we got that draining, I'm going to take these floorboards off. So I think I said in one of the maintenance videos I was talking about doing this at some point. I believe I said then I was going to wait till winter time. In other words, right now, and while we're filming this, it's what month is it? March. So we got a while yet till winter. We're just coming into the riding season here in Kentucky. But I think I mentioned I was going to wait till winter to do that. I kind of changed my mind, decided to go ahead and do it now. Before riding season, one of the bigger reasons was, as I said at the beginning, I was starting to have a lot of symptoms of the compensator going bad or being bad. And it seemed like they were starting to happen more often, kind of at the end of last year. The starter grinding and stuff like that may happen once every 10, 15 times that you would start the bike, and it was usually when it was hot. You're out riding, you stop for gas, and when you go to restart the bike, you would get quite a bit of grinding, maybe once every 10 or 15 times that you started it hot like that. Toward the end of the year, it seemed to be getting more often, and I've rode probably 400 or 500 miles so far this year on days where it's been nice enough and everything. Seemed like it was happening a lot more often this year. Probably once every 5 times or so. So started thinking that I probably ought to go ahead and replace this before winter. It's getting worse and worse quickly. So decided to go ahead and do it now. It's got to be done sooner or later, so I can hold on to the tools here. Other than that, the bike's been running great since we did the maintenance. Check out the playlists or the videos I've got. I did some maintenance type videos on it. One of them, we went in the cam chest, put a new cam support plate, oil pump, that kind of stuff over in the cam chest. We put rear brakes on this. I've got a video of like a general look over and inspection to kind of get ready for the riding season. So after doing all that, the bike's been running great, riding great. Haven't had any issues. I think we had to take this, I don't remember. I think that support has to come out of the way too. We actually went into the primary, one of the other videos that I was just talking about. We actually went into the primary and did an inspection and an oil change. To do just an oil change, you don't have to take the primary cover off. The drain plug on the bottom like we saw, and then you just fill it through the derby cover here. But I wanted to go ahead and inspect the compensator, the clutch, get a good look inside there, the chain tensioner. So we went ahead and took the primary cover off as part of the primary maintenance. I don't remember. I think we did. It looks like we do have to take that out of the way. Or at the very least, even if we can get the cover off with this mount in the way, I'm going to want to remove it because the compensator sits right up here in the front of the primary case. So I'm going to have to get this out of the way to get it off anyway. No big deal. I'm going to take the shifter off while I'm here. If I can find the right Allen wrench. But as I said, the plan, if it would have held together, the plan was to go ahead and wait till this coming winter, 9 months from now, to do this rather than doing it now. That's okay. That's the way it goes. I just realized I need another tool. For the clutch, I need a pair of snap ring pliers. I think I'm going to go ahead and let this finish draining before I go any farther. All right, it's been draining for a while. We're probably got just about as much out of the drain holes we're going to get. So I'm going to start taking these bolts around the outside of the primary cover off. Got my magnetic tray over here. I've showed you that in other videos. Great to have. Harbor Freight, if you don't have one, pretty cheap. They're under $5 a piece. Sometimes you can get a set of like 3 of them or whatever, small, medium, and large, for under 10. But definitely have the manual. That if all else fails, the manual, a good manual, will have troubleshooting steps in it. You can kind of follow along. Do you have power here? Do you have power there? What's the reading on this wire? All right, primary cover's off. I don't see anything really crazy inside this cover. Like we had the metal flake in the oil and on the drain plug when we started draining that. Everything in here looks okay. There's no big chunks or anything like that. As we talked about in the primary case maintenance video we did, this is your compensator up here. This is your clutch, your primary chain tensioner down here. This is an automatic version, an automatic adjuster. The older bikes had a manual adjuster. You would have a adjustment right in here, and as part of normal maintenance, you would have to check how much slack you had in the chain and then come in here and adjust this manual adjuster until you had the right slack. They've replaced that with these automatic ones now. Some people like them, some people don't like them. Okay, so I sat the cover over to the side in the parts washer so we can get that cleaned up on the inside. You know, I don't really know what to think here, because this almost looks like it almost looks like an upgraded compensator already. In preparation for this, I watched a few videos on YouTube myself just to kind of get an idea of, and the factory compensator in the videos that I saw, which they weren't this exact same year. You know, a couple of the videos were a year or two newer, and a couple of the videos were a year or two older. But in all of them, the compensator, factory compensator, looked a whole lot different than this one does. The spring pack in the back looked a whole lot different than this one does. This looks like it has the Belleville washers, just like we looked at in the new parts there. I wonder what that means. Did somebody already replace this? But it definitely has all the symptoms of a bad compensator. So I guess maybe somebody replaced the compensator at some point and maybe it's wore out again. I don't know. So something's wrong. As I keep saying, repeating myself, I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. It looks to it has to have been replaced, because this isn't what it should look like if it's the 2008 factory compensator. So I would say somebody's upgraded it along the lines. They've had to have. There's no question it's not the '08 factory one. Maybe this compensator is just wore out again. People on the forums and whatever people you talk to about compensators, they've said that they've wore out the Screamin Eagle ones as well. This bike has 47,000 and some change on it, so it's not brand new. But at the same time, I wouldn't think that, because when did they replace the stock compensator? If they replaced it at 20,000 miles for whatever reason, this one's only got 27,000 on it. I wouldn't expect it to be wore out already. But again, something's going on. We know that for a fact. Something's happening. So kind of the next step, we got to get this tensioner out of the way. These two bolts, pull that out of the way. There's a snap ring right here in the clutch that holds the clutch adjustment in. We got to take that out. That will let us get into the clutch nut in there that we needed this special socket for, I think. Now that looks wrong too for some reason. It's turned into one of them days, folks. But we'll battle through it. We'll figure it out here. So on one hand, it's kind of cool that the compensator's already been upgraded. But on the other hand, it still ain't working right. So I guess it don't really matter if it's been upgraded. If it's wore out or broke or whatever, then if it don't work, it don't work. Primary tensioner looks fine. It's got a couple little grooves in it here where the chains have been riding, mainly the outside of the links. So that puts lots of slack in our chain. We got to take this bolt out. We got to take the snap ring out and see what we need for a socket under there. And that is where our chain, what do you want to call this, a wedge. That's where this comes into play. So we're going to have to turn this one counterclockwise to get that bolt out. So we're going to put this up here in the top. And what will happen is once we start turning this bolt, it's going to wedge this in between the gear and the chain, which will stop it from turning and let us get the bolt loose. I'm going to take the snap ring out of here, get this out of my way so I can see what size we need for the clutch nut. See if that's something that I have. I should have something. Snap ring comes out. I was just getting ready to say keep your finger on it because if it goes flying, it's hard to find. This one sort of went flying, more falling than flying. Set that to the side. This comes out. We've got this push rod in here. It goes all the way to the other side of the bike. Nothing special here. Just keep the push rod in there the same way. In other words, instead of putting it back this way, keep it how it come out. I'm going to lay these off to the side with these two ends kind of pointing at each other, just so we know how it goes back together. All right, clutch nuts back in here. I'll get you in here for a better look-see on that. Okay, so here's kind of some of the stuff I've been describing that maybe you couldn't see. The nut back in there is the clutch nut. That nut is left-handed thread. We have to turn that to the right. Righty-tighty doesn't apply here. With left-handed thread, it's backwards, so righty-loosey. On this one, to get that out of there, we got to get this bolt out of there to get the compensator off the crankshaft. If you look back in here at these Belleville washers, let me kind of get the light here where you can see. But these here are Belleville washers, like we looked at in the parts kit earlier. I can feel the small ones or the medium-sized ones here with my finger. These are the two large ones, which is not the, from what I've found so far, other videos and pictures and the manual and so forth, this is not what the stock setup that came on this bike looked like at all. We'll get it apart and see what's going on with it. So now, next thing we got to do, this nut back in here, we got to find a socket for that, get that off, get that bolt out, and all this stuff should slide off of here in one big unit. All right, so we've got our sockets. For the front up here, crankshaft bolt, we need a 13/16. Yeah, 13/16 fits this bolt good. Back here, 1 3/16. We'll go ahead and try and break into the breaker bar first. We'll do this one since I've already got the block up here in the front to hold it. Hopefully you can see. I don't know. Yeah, we don't want to be looking at that. So, all right, so that broke loose. I think that'll be good enough for that. Quite a bit of torque on this front bolt. Probably got some Loctite or something on it too. We'll see here in a minute when we get it out there. So now I'm going to put that up here in the clutch pack. That will keep it from turning while I loosen the clutch nut. This one's left-handed thread, so we have to turn it to the right as if we were going to be tightening it. That wasn't that bad. Ratchet. Here we are. You may have noticed that things are different here in the garage from my other videos. I actually closed my business down, the Brock Automotive Repair that you've seen in some of the other videos. We ended up closing that down here about a month ago now at the time we're filming this. So I'll be working here in my home garage a lot more. So that's another video for another time. I'll probably do a video on, see, I'm not paying attention. I'm tightening this bolt. This bolt's left-handed, this bolt here I'm on is right-handed thread, normal thread. So lefty-loosey on this one. I will be doing another video probably on the subject of closing the shop down. So if you want to know more about what happened, watch that one. So, clutch nut, crank bolt, crankshaft bolt. This is falling apart. All right, so yeah, this has, looks like they reused the factory bolt because this has the yellow Loctite, which probably came from the factory, but it's also got a pretty good clump right here of other Loctite, something. So I would say somebody reused this bolt when they had it apart. So now both of these should slide off together. I guess maybe we can just take this one apart while it's still on here. So the kit that I bought is at least upgraded from this kit, because in the new kit, I'll lay these side by side here in a minute so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. I'm going to put these old parts up here on the bench and we'll lay them side by side with the new part to kind of see what's going on. If you end up taking this chain out of here completely, just make sure that you mark it or lay it where it's going to be rotating the same way when you put it back in the bike. This definitely has some wear on it. Take the ramps out of here. But I don't see anything that's worn awful, broke, right there's our problem. But it's definitely got some wear on it. Here are the Belleville washers that we looked at earlier in the new kit, the new parts kit. The rotor in here. The rotor in here is the same as the kit we have. I can see where somebody's dremeled inside the front of the case here. So if you're doing one of these, I'll get you in here to see it in a minute. If you're doing one of these from scratch, where you have all the stock parts in here and you're putting the Screamin Eagle kit like we started out to do, you either have to take the primary case off as well to get this rotor out, or you can leave the case on there, but to get the rotor out, you have to grind the inside of the case right here. When you start out, there's not enough clearance to slide the rotor all the way out. It hits the case up in here. Bends were here. I think I'm gonna go get a paint marker and mark this chain like I talked about. I'm gonna clean this case out with some brake cleaner while we've got it down this far, just to kind of wash whatever other filings and stuff that we saw in the oil, kind of wash all that out of the case here with some brake clean. So I'm gonna get this clutch and chain out of the way so that I can get behind it to clean. As I was talking about a minute ago, getting the rotor out, either you have to take the case off or you grind it right here to make clearance so you can slide the rotor out with the case still on. Obviously that's been machined, or whatever you want to call it, ground down in here. So somebody's already had this apart, already had the rotor off of it, and put in the upgraded, what appears to me to be a Screamin Eagle kit. So here's kind of the old stuff, new stuff, the new Belleville washers, then the old bolt, the new bolt. So one difference between the new Screamin Eagle stuff and what I assume is an older Screamin Eagle unit is the addition of these plastic funnels. The addition of this little plastic funnel inside the primary case cover. If we look at the gears itself, we can see these. I assume that's a oil, to direct oil to a certain place. This gear does not have that. This one has the plastic type of bushing with the grooves in it for the lubrication. This one has the Torrington bearing, the actual metal, a regular bearing rather than just a bushing. One more difference in these two is you can see this new one has these grooves cut in it while the old one does not. Again, I don't know, I assume that's for lubrication purposes, to throw lube up inside. Who knows? but anyway, they're different. On the back side of these, again, we have the lube grooves for the ramps, where this one does not. Over here with the bolts, like I talked about earlier, the old bolt is a regular hex head. You use a regular socket for. The new one, you need a Torx bit for. I don't understand. I can't think of a reason that they would use this rather than a regular hex bolt. I'm not sure. Obviously, there's some reason they did it, but so the new Screamin Eagle kit that I just purchased here not long ago is definitely upgraded, better, more refined, whatever you want to call it, than this older kit, which again I assume is an older version of the Screamin Eagle, because so many things look so much like the one that I know for a fact is the Screamin Eagle. We get this rotor off of here, kind of compare it to the new one, see what we got going on there. Get this case cleaned out, and then we'll start putting stuff back together. Got the rotor off. Everything in here looks fine. Something that does look a little strange. Let me find something to point with here. If you look at all these coils like these, if you look at the coils like these, all the wire is wound. That one's a little weird, but all the wire here is wound nice and neat. If you look over here like at these ones, you can see the wire's not wrapped. Wow, losing our light. Hopefully you can still see. All right, technical difficulties, folks. But like these, you can see, I'll zoom in here. You can see the wires aren't wrapped real neat. I don't think that affects the way it works, because the bike charges normally. I never had any issue with it charging or wacky readings on the gauge or anything like that. But some of these, namely these two and this one, are just the way they're wrapped looks pretty weird. There's the rotors themselves. This is the old one. This is the new one. Everything about them looks the same. Same number of magnets inside. Same shape out here, same height, all that kind of stuff. These just pull off. I know I didn't show that on the video, but what I did was I took 2 picks, just stuck one in each hole like that, and then just pulled on the picks and pulled it straight off of the crankshaft here. It's a little bit, you have to pull on it a little bit because of the magnets. The magnets are trying to keep it back in there, but there wasn't anything hard about it. I was pulled on those 2 picks and it slid right off of there. Because of this clearance that someone has ground into it in the past, obviously you're looking at it, I was able to slide it right off of there. Okay, so I got the idea. Before we go much farther, I'm going to use my calipers here to kind of measure the differences in the old parts and the new parts. We've already seen that there's visually some differences between like these 2 gears, but I'm going to measure just to see kind of how much difference there is. So first, this old gear, I'm going to measure this lowest point right here of the ramps. So right there, I've got 0.450, just less than a half an inch, and that's right there in the basically the thinnest part of that gear. This new gear that we can visually just tell is a whole lot thicker. And the low point is 0.510, so about 60 thousandths of an inch thicker right there. It's not a lot, but it is thicker. Next, I'm going to measure the tallest point of the ramp here, basically the thickest part of the gear. This brand new one is 1.340, 1340. And this old one is 1260, 1.260. So new gear definitely thicker, not by a whole lot, a ton, but definitely thicker. To kind of see this old kit, the one we just took out, how long has that been in there? Because I'm still kind of confused over, at some point the bike had a problem with the compensator. This kit that we just took out was put in there, but now we're having issues with it again at I think the bike's got 47,400 miles right now. So I'm just kind of trying to figure out why this replacement went bad seemingly pretty quickly. I kind of gave the example earlier. Let's say the bike had 25,000 miles on it when the bone stock original factory one came out and this unit went in. That means that this unit wore out within another 20,000 miles, give or take. So that to me, I wouldn't expect the factory original one to wear out at 20,000 miles. I would expect more 30, 40, 50,000 miles for the factory original to wear out. So, in that case, we're expecting it to wear out twice as fast as it probably normally should. And then this heavier duty replacement unit also wore out as quick as the stock one did. Whatever. We're going to put this new stuff in regardless. Get the case cleaned up, get the cover cleaned up, get everything cleaned up, and then we can start reassembly. That's going to be part 2 of the video. This one's getting a little bit longer than I expected it to already, just the teardown. So this is going to be part 1. Keep your eye out for part 2. If I remember, I'll put the link to the part 2 of this video in the description of this video, so it'll help you find it. Going to get everything cleaned up, do my research, and we'll be back for part 2. Okay, I've done some of the research. What I found out is there are different generations of the Screamin Eagle compensator kit. It looks like the one we took out of the bike is kind of a version 1. The bike did not come with that kit. It has been put in there before I owned it. The new Screamin Eagle kit that we're going to install is kind of the version 2. The thrust washer got upgraded from the plastic to the Torrington bearing we looked at. The drive gear was made a little bit thicker with different ramps on it. The lubrication grooves, those kinds of things were added. All that stuff, those improvements on the original Screamin Eagle kit became the Screamin Eagle version 2. The version 2 is all you can get now. When you order the Screamin Eagle compensator kit for these bikes, that's the kit you get. You can no longer get the version 1 unless you buy it, used on eBay or something like that. Ordering a new kit, you're going to get the version 2 with all the upgrades that we've already looked at. So there's the answer for that. We're going to get started on putting things back together in part 2. Keep an eye out. Thanks.